In tonight's headlines, King Abdullah of Jordan holds talks in Ramallah to try to revive Israeli-Palestinian talks. And Russian President Vladimir Putin arrives in Severomorsk to pay tribute to 118 sailors of the sunken submarine Kursk.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's news. I am Najwa Asran.
And I'm Ahmed Makki. Thank you for joining us.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. His Highness the Emir Sheikh Jaber al-Ahmed al-Jaber al-Subah received at 9 o'clock this morning at Bayan Palace the credentials of 3 newly appointed ambassadors to the state of Kuwait. First, the Regional Commissioner of the International Committee of the Red Cross, His Excellency Ambassador Michel Millière. Then the Ambassador of the Republic of the Comoros Islands, His Excellency Hamid Karhila. And finally, the Ambassador of New Zealand, His Excellency Douglas Frederick Lawrence Marks. The credentials receiving ceremony was attended by the First Deputy Premier and Foreign Minister, Sheikh Subah al-Ahmed al-Jaber al-Subah, the Minister of the Emiri Diwan Affairs, Sheikh Nasser Mohammed al-Ahmad al-Subah, the Emiri Diwan's Under-Secretary, Director of His Highness the Emir's Office, the Emiri Diwan's Under-Secretary for Protocol and Ceremonies Affairs, the Head of the Emiri Guard, and the Foreign Minister's Acting Director of the Protocol Department.
Still in local news, the Deputy Premier and Defense Minister Sheikh Salim al-Sabah this morning decorated a number of officers with their new ranks in conformity with the degrees of His Highness the Emir, the Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces. Colonel Fahad al-Yusuf al-Sabah from the Emiri Guard was also promoted in line with an exceptional Emiri degree. During a speech he delivered on the occasion, the Deputy Premier and Defense Minister called on the new officers to abide by the spirit of their military oath and to fulfill their commitments of loyalty and courage, wishing them every success and to Kuwait glory and prosperity under the lofty leadership of His Highness the Emir and His Highness the Crown Prince and Prime Minister.
And moving on to regional news, Jordan's King Abdullah held in-depth talks with the Palestinian president in Ramallah today, during which he reiterated his country's support for Palestinian rights. The Jordanian Foreign Minister Abdel Ilah Al-Khatib said Jordan would not accept Israeli sovereignty over the holy places in Jerusalem, which he said was an Arab right, stressing that Security Council Resolution 242, which calls for Israeli withdrawal from the territories Israel has occupied in 1967, applies to East Jerusalem as well. King Abdullah arrived in Ramallah this morning at the head of a high-ranking Jordanian delegation that included, in addition to Al-Khatib, Prime Minister Ali Abu Ragab and Chief of Staff Faiz Al-Tarawna. From Ramallah, the king flew by helicopter to Tel Aviv, where he was welcomed by the Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak and Israeli dignitaries. Barak and Abdullah met last week in Amman and also held talks 3 months ago in the Israeli port city of Eilat on the Gulf of Aqaba. The Israeli Haaretz Daily today quoted unofficial Palestinian sources as saying that Abdullah's visit would include a series of Jordanian proposals on the issues of Jerusalem and borders.
Jordan is committed to help bring about a peaceful solution to the Arab-Israeli conflict. We have suffered for
Turning out to other news, environmental pressure group Greenpeace demanded today that the stricken Russian nuclear submarine Kursk be recovered from the depths of the parent sea to prevent leaks of radiation. The group also called on all countries with nuclear-powered vessels to withdraw them from service. Greenpeace said the submarine should be raised intact if possible. Meanwhile, the Kremlin said the Russian President Vladimir Putin arrived at the Northern Fleet's home base of Severomorsk today to take part in a ceremony mourning 118 sailors who died on the sunken Kursk submarine. Around 500 relatives of the crew are seeking to visit the site of the disaster, which took place on August 12. Putin has been strongly criticized at home and abroad for not interrupting his holiday after the crisis broke and for taking too long to request foreign aid. More in the following report.
After official confirmation of the loss of the entire 118-man crew of the nuclear submarine Kursk, Admiral Vyacheslav Popov, commander of the Russian Navy's Northern Fleet, made a televised apology to the sailors' families late last night, stressing that the entire crew bears no fault for the catastrophe. Russian officials have given several theories to explain why one of the country's most modern submarines, the Kursk, sank on August 12th. One theory proclaims that a foreign submarine collided with the Kursk. Another speculation states that the Russian submarine may have hit a landmine dating back to World War II. And the final theory claims that an explosion of a torpedo or another Russian weapon probably sank the Kursk. The Russian government has been severely criticized for its handling of the tragedy, especially over the fact that it took so long to accept Western offers of assistance to rescue the trapped crew. The Russian media in particular was not in a forgiving mood. President Putin's leadership has been especially targeted, the heaviest he has experienced since taking over power at the beginning of the year. The Kremlin said today that President Putin has ordered an official day of mourning to be observed Wednesday for the 118 seamen that died on the sunken submarine. Messages of condolences to Russia have arrived from many states, including Germany, France, Italy, and China, as well as from UN Secretary General Kofi Annan.
Democratic presidential nominee Al Gore returned verbal fire today from Republican foe George W. Bush on the state of the U.S. military. Gore rejected accusations by Bush that under the Clinton-Gore administration, the past 7.5 years, many of the U.S. military's needs have been neglected. The vice president noted the big increase in defense spending and vowed, if elected president, to use the nation's prosperity to keep the military strong.
Let others try to restore the old guard. Our focus is on you and your families and your community and your future. I know one thing about the presidency.
On the other hand, Bush appeared before the 101st Convention of Veterans of Foreign Wars in Milwaukee yesterday and promised if he wins the White House on November 7th, a massive review of U.S. troops deployment overseas, and higher military funding. Bush renewed his call for a $1 billion military pay raise, averaging $750 for each member of the military yearly, and re-enlistment bonuses for men and women with critical skills. This is on top of a 3.7% military pay raise Clinton approved earlier this year. According to a new Washington Post ABC News poll published today, Vice President Al Gore has climbed to a narrow lead following the Democratic National Convention. Gore currently holds a 50% to 45% advantage over Republican nominee Governor George W. Bush among registered voters, the first time he has clearly led in a post-ABC News poll. Bush led Gore by 9 percentage points less than 2 weeks ago, a shift of 14 percentage points in a race that the Republicans had dominated for nearly a year.
Elsewhere, Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihiro Mori has arrived in the southern Indian city of Bangalore for a 3-day visit, which is expected to close a chapter of tension over the country's nuclear tests in 1998 and help forge closer economic ties. Mori also addressed leaders of India's technology firms and extended an invitation to India's software industry to do more business in Japan. Yesterday in Pakistan, the second country on Mori's foreign nation swing across South Asia assured the Japanese premier that it would not break its unilateral moratorium on further testing unless New Delhi broke its moratorium first.
これから日本とインドはお互いに IT 関係で補完をし合って素晴らしい
Still to come ahead in tonight's news, Japan and North Korea try to establish diplomatic ties and talks held in Tokyo. And British troops restore calm in Northern Ireland after a night of clashes in Belfast.
Japanese and North Korean negotiators vowed today to try to establish diplomatic ties, but hopes for a breakthrough looked dim as the longtime foes stuck to entrenched positions on key issues. On the first of 2 days of talks in Tokyo, North Korea repeated its call for Japan to apologize and pay reparations for its harsh 1910 to 1945 rule of the Korean Peninsula. Japan returned by raising the sensitive issue of 10 Japanese citizens Tokyo believes were kidnapped by North Korean agents in the past. Demands mean the second round of normalization talks look difficult. Previous talks have founded on both issues raised today, and some observers say only top leaders could make the key decisions needed to break the bilateral stalemate.
In another major topic, British troops restored an uneasy calm to Northern Ireland's capital today after sporadic overnight violence between protesting guerrilla groups followed a day of bloodshed and arson. Troops set up checkpoints and patrolled parts of the capital as a violent feud between protesting guerrillas threatened to spiral out of control and damage Northern Ireland's peace process after 2 men who had links to the Loyalist Ulster Defence Association, UDA, were shot dead yesterday. They were shot by a lone gunman as they walked to their car outside a pitting shop. In a separate incident, shots were fired at several homes of members of the Progressive Unionist Party, PUP, which has close links to Ulster Volunteer Force, UVF guerrillas. And in the same area of Belfast yesterday, shots were fired at the offices of the Ulster Democratic Party and the offices of the Progressive Unionist Party, both Protestant pro-British Loyalist groups. The PUP offices were also set on fire. Britain said it would act firmly to stamp out the violence in the province, where politicians from the Protestant majority and Roman Catholic minority are trying to seal a lasting peace.